In the heart of bustling Lagos, where dreams chased the wind and stories were whispered through rustling palm trees, lived Esther, a maid in the grand mansion of Chief George. With hands calloused from work and eyes wide with wonder, she moved through the house like a gentle breeze, quiet yet observant. Chief George was a man of influence, a widower with a daughter as radiant as the morning sun, Amaka. Amaka was everything Esther was not: wealthy, adorned in silk, celebrated in the city. But what Esther lacked in riches, she carried in grace, humility, and a smile that softened the hardest heart. On a warm Saturday afternoon, the mansion buzzed with excitement. The Lagos State Beauty Pageant was holding auditions, and Amaka had been invited. Dressed in royal blue lace and heels that clicked like power, she descended the staircase with the elegance of a queen. But her eyes, sharp and proud, caught Esther watching from the corner, mop in hand. With a sneer, Amaka turned to her father. "Daddy, look at your maid, standing there like she belongs at a pageant." Esther lowered her gaze, cheeks burning. Chief George laughed softly, not unkindly. "Everyone belongs somewhere, Amaka. Even the stars began in darkness." Later that night, Esther sat by the kitchen window, peeling yam. Her thoughts drifted to the world outside, the one with cameras, crowns, and applause. Could someone like her ever dream beyond these walls? Just then, Chief George entered the kitchen, surprising her. "Esther," he said gently, "do you have dreams?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. But they are not dreams for people like me." The chief smiled. "Dreams don't ask where you come from, only if you believe." With that, he handed her a small brown envelope. "The pageant is still open. Go. Let the world see who you are." The next morning, Esther stood outside the audition hall, her mother's old wrapper tied around her waist, hair braided neatly. Laughter echoed as other girls in designer dresses turned to stare. "Are you lost?" one asked. Esther smiled and shook her head. She walked in with trembling hands but a heart full of courage. When it was her turn, the judges looked unimpressed. But when she spoke, soft, clear, confident, the room fell silent. She spoke of kindness, of strength wrapped in silence, of beauty that served rather than demanded. When she finished, one judge whispered, "She is different. She is real." Amaka was the face of the pageant. Her photos were everywhere, her smile on billboards, her name on everyone's lips. But when the top 10 contestants were announced, a ripple of shock swept through Lagos. Esther's name was among them. "The world is seeing what I saw long ago." That night, Esther knelt in prayer, tears streaming down her face. The journey ahead was uncertain, but her spirit had awakened. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Onitsha riverside as Esther arrived at rehearsals. The hall buzzed with chatter, Amaka's laughter cutting through like a knife. Esther's heart pounded, yet she held her head high. In the changing room, she found a simple wrapper and blouse provided by the pageant organizers. They fit her like a second skin, comfortable and unpretentious. As she dressed, she felt a quiet flame of confidence kindle within her. On stage, lights glimmered against the polished wood. The MC called her name, and Esther stepped forward, arms steady. She moved with grace learned from years of carrying heavy pots of jollof rice, her smile warm. When the spotlight found her eyes, she spoke of home, of dusty roads and humble stalls, of neighbors who shared cola nuts and prayers. The judges exchanged surprised glances, the audience murmured with wonder. In that moment, Esther knew she had won something more precious than applause, her own belief. Back at the mansion, Amaka fumed. Her entourage whispered bitterness, convinced she was destined for the crown. Chief George watched his daughter's storm and spoke gently. "Pride blinds you to what truly shines." Amaka spat the words away but felt their weight. That night, she dreamt of Esther's calm eyes, so different from her own mirror-reflected vanity. Meanwhile, Esther walked home through winding alleys, lantern light flickering on mud brick walls. Children waved, shopkeepers cheered, and even Mama Titi offered blessings. With each greeting, her nerves eased. In her small room, she knelt by the clay hearth and thanked the gods of chance. Tomorrow held another challenge, but tonight, gratitude filled her heart. The next pageant segment tested talent. Amaka's troupe of dancers performed complex routines, their sequence flashing under spotlight. Esther chose a different path, a folk song from her village in Enugu State, sung in gentle harmonies. When the music began, she closed her eyes and let childhood memories guide her voice: village drums, morning roosters, the cool scent of ugba fermenting by the stream. Silence fell when the last note faded. The audience held its breath before erupting in applause. Judges leaned forward, notebook pens poised. Esther's simple song had stirred something deep within them, a sense of roots, of shared ancestry. As she bowed, tears glistened at the corners of her eyes. She whispered a silent prayer for those who raised her, though they were gone. Rumors swirled that the pageant would be rigged in Amika's favor. In the grand hall of the Onitsha Civic Center, whispers traveled faster than the breeze. Chief George confronted the organizers. "Let truth guide this contest, not power or wealth." His reputation demanded respect, and the panel nodded. Amika watched her father's quiet stand and felt shame prick her heart. That evening, Esther studied her reflection in a broken mirror, braiding her hair with fraying ribbon. She paused, remembering Papa Jay's silent dignity by her roadside stall. His unwavering faith in her stirred courage anew. Under the moon's silver glow, she vowed to honor every kindness shown to her, by her parents, by Chief George, by the silent beggar who first saw her worth. In the evening gown round, contestants floated across the stage like ethereal spirits. Amika's ivory silk dress flowed around her, but Esther selected deep green fabric embroidered with uli patterns. As she glided forward, her dress whispered tales of ancestral art and resilience. The audience leaned in, captivated by the harmony of tradition and elegance. When the MC asked why she chose that color, Esther smiled brightly. "Green is the promise of new beginnings, of hope sprouting even in the poorest soil." A hush fell. Judges scribbled notes, nodding at each other. In that moment, tradition and progress intertwined, and everyone sensed that this contest was no longer merely about beauty, it was about the soul. The final question loomed like dusk on the horizon: what is true beauty? Amika practiced rehearsed lines, polished to perfection. Esther, however, closed her eyes and drew upon every act of kindness she had ever known. When her turn came, she stood tall, voice clear. True beauty is kindness in action. It is the strength to give when you have little, the courage to stand for others when no one watches. The audience wept, the judge's pen stilled. As she stepped off the stage, Chief George embraced her. "You have lit the city's heart," he whispered. Amika, watching from backstage, felt her own heart soften. For the first time, she understood that crowns and titles were fleeting, true nobility lived in humility. Judgment night arrived beneath a canopy of stars. In the hushed hall, tension coiled like a serpent. One by one, runner-ups were called. Amika held her breath, lips pressed tight. Finally, the MC announced, the Lagos State Beauty Queen, Esther Nwagbo. Cheers thundered. Esther froze, tears bursting free. Amika stepped forward and, with trembling hands, placed the silver crown upon her head. That moment, silence fell. Then Amika whispered to the crowd, "Esther deserves this honor more than any of us. Today, I learn that humility outshines pride." The audience rose to their feet. Chief George, watching, felt pride swell, not for his daughter's lesson, but for the girl who proved that one kind heart can change the world. With crown perched upon her braided hair, Esther toured the city, visiting orphanages and schools. She shared meals from her own kitchen, taught songs of courage, and lent her voice to those silenced by hardship. Each smile she ignited spread like wildfire. Mama Titi wept when she saw her old friend feeding hungry children with steaming bowls of ogbono soup. Esther's heart had grown too big for any palace. Back at the mansion, Amika offered her hand in friendship. "Will you teach me to see the world your way?" she asked. Esther squeezed her hand and replied, "Let us learn together." Thus began a sisterhood forged in respect, bound by shared purpose. Chief George announced a grand feast at his compound in Enugu to celebrate Esther's achievement. Guests arrived dressed in vivid ankara, drums played, and kola nut blessings floated through the warm evening air. Esther served each elder personally, bending low and offering her respect. When she found Papa Jay at the back corner, no longer in tattered clothes but clean and dignified, her heart skipped a beat. He nodded silently, eyes shining with pride. Later, he revealed his truth: "I was Joseph Akaig, your father's friend. I tested your heart so you could teach this city the power of kindness." Esther wept, bowing before him. The drums thundered in joy, celebrating not only a queen but the blossoming of hope itself. Rumors spread that Esther would open a charity home for widows and orphans. True to her word, she purchased a modest compound in Auca, painting it bright ochre. Volunteers arrived, young women inspired by her story, men who'd felt her generosity at roadside stalls. Together, they built classrooms, planting mango trees whose sweet fruit would feed hungry mouths for years. On opening day, Esther stood before the gates, crown gleaming in the sun. She recited a prayer in Igbo, invoking blessings of Njoku, prosperity, and Nyanu, light. As children poured in, laughter rang out like bells, and Esther realized that her true reign was not crowned by silver, but by every grateful heart she touched. Amika launched an art scholarship in memory of her mother, inviting young painters and sculptors to capture the spirit of their people. Esther, now advisor to the Lagos Cultural Council, traveled with judges to remote villages, discovering hidden talents and ancient motifs. Their partnership blossomed into a movement, reviving Uli murals on community walls and returning lost proverbs to everyday speech. One afternoon, in a tiny hamlet on the banks of the Niger, Esther found a frail old woman offering her dried yam. Esther accepted humbly and sat beside her, listening as the woman sang a lullaby passed down through generations. In that moment, Esther understood that every story, no matter how small, held the seeds of greatness. News arrived that Chief George's health was failing. Blood tests showed a grave illness, and the big CEO's chair would soon be empty. Esther and Amika rushed to his bedside in Onitsha's private wing. The old man smiled weakly as they approached. "You have both made me proud," he whispered. "Use every gift well." Tears brimmed in Esther's eyes, but she forced a steady breath. "Father, your legacy lives in every life we touch." Amika pressed his hand in solidarity. In the hush, words felt small, only shared love could heal this final test of their hearts. When Chief George passed beneath a full moon, the city mourned. Flags flew at half-mast, elders recited funeral dirges. At the funeral home, Esther delivered a tribute. "He taught me that true power lies in humility, and that kindness is the greatest inheritance." As she spoke, the crowd wept for both the man and the moth he had guided from darkness into light. After the burial, Esther and Amika stood at the riverbank where Chief George once taught them to skip stones. They released white doves, each carrying a ribbon cut from his old suit. The birds soared into the purple twilight, carrying his spirit into the sky. With Amika by her side, Esther took the helm of Chief George's philanthropic foundation, renaming it Onwoma, Good Life. They focused on education, healthcare, and women's empowerment. Under their leadership, hundreds of schools arose in forgotten villages, and clinics dotted the savannah, staffed by nurses trained through scholarships Esther championed. One day, a young doctor from Malka presented Esther with a newborn, his child named after her. "Your kindness saved my family," he said. Esther collapsed into tears, realizing that every small plate of food she once shared had multiplied into countless life-saving acts. Years passed, and Esther's compound in Auka blossomed into a thriving township. Markets bustled with crafts styled in revived Uli patterns. At its heart stood a statue of Adeze, a mother goddess of hospitality, her outstretched hands holding a calabash of rice. Children danced around it, their laughter echoing like sacred drums. Each year, on the anniversary of her crowning, Esther and Amika hosted a festival of kindness, where strangers shared meals, and old debts were forgiven. Even the most hardened souls found their hearts softened, understanding that generosity was a currency more durable than gold. In her later years, Esther returned to the roadside where her journey began. The wooden stall was long gone, replaced by a granite monument engraved with Papa J's first whispered thanks. Villagers knelt before it in reverence. Esther pressed her palm to the cool stone and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." As sunset painted the sky in crimson and gold, she felt a presence at her side. Amika slipped her arm through hers, and together they watched the horizon, where dreams, and kind hearts, would forever set sail. On a gentle dawn, a caravan arrived bearing a strange gift, a polished wheelchair wrapped in satin. Inside lay a note in Chief George's handwriting: "For the times your heart felt heavy, may you rest, then rise again." Esther's breath caught. She pressed the note to her chest and remembered every test, every act of faith. That evening, she wheeled herself along the riverside, her laughter mingling with the water's song. People cheered, not out of pity, but out of love. For the queen who taught them that dignity lies not in one's stature, but in one's deeds. Legends say that on moonless nights, you can still see Papa J's silhouette by the mango tree, no longer crippled, but whole and radiant. Some claim he waits to test new hearts, to spark kindness in unseen places. Esther, now an old woman crowned in silver hair, visits the tree each harvest season and leaves a plate of yam porridge, just as she did all those years ago. When asked why, she smiles and replies, "Some stories deserve to be lived again." And so the cycle continues, one act of grace begetting 1,000 more, woven into the tapestry of Umana and beyond. In the final chapter of her life, Esther lay on a bed of white lilies in Onwoma Hall, surrounded by those she had uplifted. Amika sat at her side, clutching her hand. Esther looked at the faces around her, students, elders, children, and artists, each bearing the imprint of her love. With a whisper, she said, "Kindness is the song I leave behind. Sing it well." As she closed her eyes, lanterns were lit in every village across the land. Their flames danced in unison, guiding her spirit toward the ancestral realm where all good deeds are celebrated forever. Long after Esther's passing, a festival of lanterns lights up the Niger on the eve of the new year. People float candles on carved calabashes, sending prayers downstream. They tell tales of Esther Nwagbo, the maid who became queen through humility, whose simple meals fed the hungry and whose gentle words healed the broken. And whenever a stranger arrives at a village stall, weary and hungry, the cook smiles and says, "You are not forgotten." Because in Igboland, as across all lands touched by this story, kindness has become the greatest inheritance, and its flame will never die.